Like,
All right, guys. So I got some questions here, kind of inspired by Mike Boyle podcast. Just wanted to hear their perspectives on a few things.
whose perspectives?
Ant and Rye's perspectives.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Well, who's here? I don't know.
Yeah, you didn't give us
I thought you said there was an introduction that would play before this.
Yeah, it's just like
it's his little thing.
it's a theme song kind of thing. It's like welcome to the Prime Podcast.
All right, guys. Welcome back to the Prime podcast here with
Riley.
And Anthony.
and Meg Chambo. Today I'm going to be asking them a couple questions, kind of inspired with some things I heard Mike Boyle talk about on their podcast. Just wanted to hear their perspectives on a couple things and what we do here at our gym. All right, so first I want to hear your thoughts and like pros and cons of barbell work.
Go ahead.
I'm taking it away.
Yeah.
Okay. For adult classes.
Just in general to get started, like just pros and cons of it that you've gathered.
Pros. I'll start with this because there's been a lot of people coming in from different styles of training recently. I like how it makes people feel really cool about themselves. Would you agree with that? Like they do an overhead movement and they're like, wow, I feel pretty strong. Or they do a clean or a snatch and they feel really proud of themselves. So I like that part of it, even though that's not.
Yeah, like
Whatever.
maybe they didn't know that they could do it, and then
Yeah.
they actually can, and they can do it pretty well, trained correctly. What about you, Ant?
I would agree with that, especially when it comes to like deadlifting. I think people figuring out that they can lift a lot more weight than they previously thought they could. You know, I know deadlifts are, according to Mike Boyle, is probably the movement you should never do, a traditional deadlift. But I feel like to Riley's point, that a lot of folks who have come to our gym recently have come from a boot camp style gym where that's all they do is a lot of reps, no weight, and they want to feel strong and they want to feel capable. And in some ways, it builds their self-esteem. Well, I shouldn't say in some ways, in a lot of ways, because now they feel capable and strong to be able to do something that they never thought possible. And it's just a way for them to continue to develop themselves and develop their mentality around exercise.
Yeah, so that kind of answers
Put
the
your
next.
mic closer to your face.
Sorry, that kind of answers the next kind of part that I was going to go into is, do adults need to be doing barbell work in the gym? He kind of goes on a little
he's
rant.
anti-barbell.
Yeah, anti-barbell. So what are some things that, like, besides what you guys just said about emotional and things like that it can do? What have you seen physically wise that it would benefit adult classes and adult that we train?
Yeah, I'll have to take this one. All right. So I don't think anybody needs to do anything. So I'm just going to put that out there that like everything is subjective. Every exercise works. Every exercise doesn't work. Every exercise can be good for somebody, could be bad for another person. So it's not necessarily if somebody needs to do it. It's a matter of if you want to do it. And if you don't want to do barbell work, then you don't come to our gym. You go to like a boot camp class. But if you want to get stronger and if you want to do certain things, barbells have been around forever. And, Mike Boyle talks about mitigating risk, is your word, which is like reducing the risk of injury and pain in doing exercise. So yes, in some ways, when you have people deadlift improperly and back squat improperly or do things where their bodies may not be 100% ready for, there is an inherent risk of injury or pain. But there's an inherent risk of injury and pain for every exercise. Like we've had people do Bulgarian split squats, which is Mike Boyle's famous rear foot elevated split squats, who have knee pain or who get back pain from doing it. Or, doing a step up, which is a unilateral thing which he promotes, and step ups, they can end up with back pain there as well. So I don't think any particular exercise or implement, right, because we're talking about barbells, you're talking about a tool for exercise that that people need to do to be in shape or do whatever, but it's more about like, do you want to do that? And is that something that's in your repertoire that you want to get better at? And if it is, then you have to do barbell stuff to get better at that thing.
All right, kind of.
Right, you have anything to add to that?
We're moving on to the next.
All
Because
right.
she has more that goes
Yeah,
with
but-
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
talking to your microphone. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Sorry, this is our first time back on the pod here. So
been months.
It's almost a year, really. So we're just trying to get back into the swing of
And
things.
change the scenery too. We're doing it more conversation style to have a video to put out there.
A nice Saturday table talk. All right, guys. So, for example, what if I'm a mom and I hurt my back deadlifting? That is obviously negatively affecting me when I was just trying to work out. Clearly, I did not finish my thought there because there's no question. Basically, what are some ways, I guess, that like, besides just saying like, oh, we need to be watching them as coaches and making sure that they're doing things more correctly or more correctly? I don't know.
The people know what you're saying.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, guys. Yeah. What are some things, I guess, that to like avoid that and injury and stuff during class when there's so many people and they're like day-to-day life kind of people? That made no sense. That whole bit needs to be cut out.
It's not getting cut out. It's everything is going just as it is.
Oh, bummer. Rats.
So to clarify your question, are you want to know like how do you mitigate the risk of like a regular Joe Schmo or Cindy stay-at-home mom from getting hurt deadlifting?
Yeah, I think you worded that better than I did. Yeah. I tried.
So how do we prevent somebody from getting injured doing these barbell movements? And what are some ways that we can, other than just coaching them on doing the movement correctly, like how can we make them not have pain or injury from it?
Yeah, especially like you said, a lot of people have never done these movements before. So like, how are we helping them?
Making sure we regress and progress movements. We all did the Mike Boyle certification, so we learned the steps. If someone has never been in here before and they don't know how to deadlift, then we take them step one. And making sure like physical cues are really important too.
So just kind of like evaluating each person that's coming in and kind of.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the things that we probably don't do. We don't evaluate people as they come in. And I think in some ways it's beneficial. In other ways, it's kind of a waste of time because you can evaluate them in that moment. And when we write our cycles, we don't go right to deadlifting. It depends on when somebody enters a gym or starts a gym. But if folks have been with us for a while, we kind of go through a progression of deadlifting, and we'll sumo deadlift, we'll trap bar deadlift, we'll conventional deadlift. So we aren't just throwing people into the fire, so to speak, with like a traditional deadlift. When we do our cycles, that's the progression, right? So a sumo deadlift being the safest because it requires the least amount of mobility in the hamstrings and in the position. Then we move to the trap bar deadlift, which again, Mike Boyle actually does the trap bar deadlift. So you have a movement that again is safer and it puts less what they call shear forces on your lower back. So then we, after 6 weeks of deadlifting, some sort of variation, a sumo deadlift for 3 weeks, a trap bar deadlift for 3 weeks, then we go to our conventional deadlift for 3 weeks. And then I think we do a really good job, more than most gyms, in cycling through different movements. I just had this conversation with some folks about the step up and how when people first do step ups with us for like their first time, they find that they have like these huge imbalances from right to left. And that's one of the reasons why we do those movements and we incorporate more unilateral training, and we're not just like hammering squats all the time, because it gives your body a break from that regular squat or that deadlift motion. And it also kind of helps, fight those imbalances that could potentially lead to injury in the long term.
All right. So I have, how does barbell work help an adult besides just getting stronger?
Well, I think we already talked about some of the like social emotional parts of it, that feeling capable and feeling things like that. But I also find that there isn't anything that can mimic it. And I know Boyle will say like, bilateral deficit. And, they have force plates that talk about, like if you do a single leg squat with one leg, and it's equivalent to doing your body weight in a back squat and different things like that with force plates. But there's still, yes, you might feel that way, but I've been training for a long time and I've done all these things in every different variation possible. And there's just something like really hard about doing like heavy back squats that isn't really hard about doing a single leg squat. And I think just that's part of it. Just like being able to do hard things, I think goes back to the social emotional part of it where, you know, like if I can overcome this really challenging thing, it might make the rest of my life or day a little bit easier. Whereas a single leg squat, and you know, Riley knows this too. Like we've had clients who will come in and like refuse to do single leg squats because they're just assholes, for lack of a better phrase or term. And they'll say something like, "Oh, I can't do that, so I don't want to do it." You know, they can't single leg squat, you know, 3 inches down before collapsing because they have such limited mobility, limited stability or strength or whatever it is. And their default is to do the barbell movement, which again is why we want to get people away from the barbell from time to time, because then people you know, like if you look at some of the local CrossFit gyms or our quote unquote competitors, like they're heavy barbell centric facilities. And if you're always doing that stuff and all of their best athletes are always injured, then there's something to be said about like maybe taking a break from barbell stuff from time to time and working on these other things. So we talked about before, 1, to make sure you don't get injured, and 2, but also like you need to do other stuff, right? You can't always solely rely on doing one exercise because you're quote unquote kind of good at it, even though you suck at that too. So you got to incorporate other stuff to make it better. Just, I mean, similar with athletes. Like if you just did, you know, I know one of the local high schools, they do the same program they've done forever. And I think even one of the local colleges, they do like a bigger, faster, stronger strength and conditioning program, which has the same cycle of movements that they do year in and year out. And many of their athletes end up with like fractured spines, and they're loading things up in these enormous weights for box squats. And the, you know, some of the high schools and colleges locally do that, and they do the same thing over and over and over again. And it ends up just breaking their bodies down versus like building them up to get better.
Yeah, that was a good little segue there, even though you didn't know what I was going to ask next. But I was going to say, I feel like you post this a lot on your socials where you'll be like, I'm doing movements now that I was doing as a kid, and how that like makes you feel now that you're into your 40s and things like that, that if you stop doing it, you might not be able to do it now. If you wanted to kind of expand a little on that before I ask our next question.
So like staying active, you mean?
Yeah, or like you'll
you have
that
a
video when
specific
you were like
example?
running out in the
Doing
yard.
athletic things.
Yeah.
Running, jumping, throwing.
Right. Well, I mean, it's just like your brain, right? Use it or lose it type of idea. So if you don't use those muscles in different things, like things get tight, you know, like if you don't jump and run and play, like your Achilles and all those things become, you know, much more like prone to injury. Right. So if you don't, you know, if you sit around the couch for a year and then you come into the gym and you're trying to do a 1 rep max deadlift, you're probably going to hurt yourself because your muscles and your spine haven't been moving right through those ranges of motion. So you're setting yourself up for a disaster potentially because, you know, when you don't do stuff, your muscles atrophy, right? Which means they kind of weaken and get smaller. Right. And then when you don't move through ranges of motion, your muscles get tighter and you get kind of put in the position that so if you sit at a desk all the time, like you're stuck, like right now in the video, you can see us, we're kind of stuck in this kind of seated position and many people are hunched over on their computers. So your body gets crunched up in these positions. Your hip flexors get tight, your hamstrings get long and weak, your shoulders get rounded forward. So when you go and try to deadlift and reverse, which is the literally opposite of all that stuff, the hip flexors are too tight and they're pulling your hips forward. You end up in a bad position. You can't get into your hamstrings aren't strong enough to pull yourself up. So it just sets yourself up for, you know, like failure in a lot of ways because you just haven't moved through those things. And, you know, Mike Boyle said this a long time ago, and I've used it for a number of years, but the best way to get in shape is to never get out of shape. And you got to keep moving to be able to do that.
So kind of expanding off of that, I know it's not exactly the same. Our adult classes, they're not always doing speed and things that our athlete classes are doing, but why do we train our adult clientele like similar to our athlete group? Do you think it's because you kind of go off of like what you just said, kind of keeping things that you were doing when you're young or the movements, the muscles, all of that, and you kind of continue that into the adulthood and like the adult classes?
Go ahead. Do you have any input on this?
Oh, you were in the zone.
I know, he was locked in.
I mean, I could keep going, but you can talk too.
You can go first.
Okay. Are you going to add to it?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
I'm positive.
All right.
He's getting sick of talking. He doesn't have a coffee to sip on like we do.
Yeah, it's sitting in the office. in Riley's office. Eye rolls. That's on YouTube, by the way. That's good. Your eye roll. Good. And your death stare. All right. So why do we train our adults similarly to our athletes with exceptions to some plyometrics and high speed work? So the majority of things that we are going to do with our adults, right, we find because when we look at how we want to perform and our athletes move, many of those things, like we talked about just a second ago, like spinal flexion, spinal extension, which is like bending forward and reaching back, spinal like bending from side to side or rotating from side to side. I don't know if it's Idle Portal or someone else that talked about like having like a healthy, like a flexible spine as a young spine. So being able to move and be youthful through your spine and using those ranges of motion, like your hips are supposed to be like 3-dimensional. They're supposed to rotate, supposed to come up, go down, go back, go side to side, rotate. Your shoulders the same way. So you have to train yourself in positions that will allow you to move through all those different ranges of motion, because you don't know, and if you're going to throw with your son or daughter, like you're going to play catch, you're going to go play volleyball, you're going to go run around, you're going to go climb through Billy Bees' tunnels, or, go on roller coasters, or, go on slides with your kids and do different things, then you got to be able to move and like, your kids are going to be running through it. Like I just went with my 2-year-old and she's running through it and I'm on all fours trying to fit myself through these positions. And I need a little bit more flexibility to be able to get through that. Whereas my brother, who's like super obese and overweight, like his kids would be up playing and he's sitting on the bottom. So you're missing out on those experiences with your children that you don't get back because you can't move and you're unhealthy. And I think in addition, like Charles Poliquin talked about it, like the strength is gained in the range that is trained. So like if you only get stronger in the range of motion in which you train something. So if I only do, like we talked about before, like the football guys only box squatting, so they're only doing like quarter squats all the time, like what happens when they have to do a full squat? Right? So if you're only doing half push-ups all the time, what happens when you're getting a full range of motion with the bench press and your pec rips? Right? If you're only doing pull-ups to a certain thing, you don't ever get to that full overhead position, so you can't do certain movements overhead with the barbell. So it's all about like keeping joints healthy and moving them through their fullest range of motion to keep them healthy and moving for the long haul.
I'm up.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So going back to our social and emotional aspects of it, when we do those fun, different things that we do with the athletes and we put them in the adult groups, everyone is smiling, everyone's laughing, everyone's having a really good time. This hour they come into the gym is, for a lot of people, the most fun hour they have. So I think incorporating those things and letting them have fun and letting people interact with each other while also getting a lot of benefits from it is really awesome to see.
Yeah. I've noticed that a lot lately too. I know we haven't done it in a minute, but what's that pole drop
The
thing?
stick drops.
Yeah, the stick drop things. When we do things like that, usually everyone hates running and they're like, "Ugh, I'm not a runner," and that's like no one ever wants to do it, but it gets everybody going when we do things like that. I'd be interested if we did like triple as a warm up or like games like that as instead of like other little things. Like if that, I don't know, like it's
I
just
just don't need to see a torn ACL with competitive triple.
So that's why we don't do that. And
well, I mean, there's certain things. I think some of the things too is you have to be careful because some people go a little too hard. I mean, it's just like recreational sports,
Yeah, well,
right?
we have a lot of former athletes, but then we also have just not normal, but just regular people.
Yeah. So sometimes that's where
NARPs.
Yeah, NARPs. So that's sometimes where things run into issues because you do, I forget who I was talking to recently about, it might have been one of the gentlemen earlier who had a torn ACL, and he got it from playing rec league soccer because some guy was going too hard because he wanted to be a superstar rec league player. And I think that's the stuff you have to be conscious of as a gym owner or as a coach. Like, yeah, some of that stuff is fun, but also how do we make sure, like stick drop, you're probably not going to like tear an ACL, like you might tweak a hamstring, but if you can shorten it so it's not such a big distance. So there's some ways to do that, but when you have something like it's competitive, like one-on-one, like triple might be, like where you're playing like it almost like basketball one-on-one, there's definitely a higher level of risk for non-athletes or people who haven't been athletes for a long time because your body thinks you can do something or your brain thinks you can do something and your body's like, yo, chill, homie. We haven't done that for like 10 years.
Fired up. All right, well, that's pretty much all I had for today. I guess I'll do I need to hit the books a little bit better so I'm a little more literate our next podcast.
We still got, it's only been 20 minutes.
How long are we going for?
At least 30, I would think. We used to do hours.
Whoa.
An hour, yeah.
Yeah, I need at least a 30-minute car ride to listen to this podcast. Do you have any questions off the top of your head? I guess we can pivot. We don't have to keep talking about this today. I guess we'll do I could do a little fun thing. Do you have any really good or really bad stories that you've seen in the gym with or just not even here, just heard about with barbell work or anything crazy that's happened that might have changed your mind positively or negatively on
I don't know.
it?
I think my thoughts on barbell work go through ebbs and flows. Sometimes I find it beneficial, but then we program deadlifts and then you get a few people who, they end up achy or uncomfortable with it. And then I'm like, well, should we really be doing this? So there's some definitely thought processes that go behind, exercise selection and should we be doing it and shouldn't we be doing it? And at the end of the day, I think people do, like Riley had mentioned before, people come to us because we're kind of that intermediary. We fill this white space in fitness in our area where we're not CrossFit, but we're also not boot camp. So we do want to expose them to barbell work, but not so much where we're like a CrossFit gym and we're crushing people or beating people up. So we try to find and strike that balance between teaching you proper movements, getting stronger in those movements, but also remembering that the other stuff is just as important. And I think that's where, as a coach or as a gym owner for the last 10 years now, I found that, like I said before, that there's value in everything. And I don't want to discredit something altogether. Boyle he's famous for just discrediting things and saying you should never back squat again, or you should never use a barbell, and it's stupid for adults to use barbells or learn power cleans or learn snatches or whatever nonsense that he spews. And I love Boyle and their staff and Kevin and all those guys. I have good relationships with them, and we've gone to their stuff and we learn from them. But I'm not in the place or frame of mind to just completely discredit a tool or just completely discredit a movement or exercise when I know that it does have some value. And I think you have to be just smart on how you program it. And I think if you look at Boyle's business model and even how they run their youth athlete program, they're very factory oriented. So it does make it easier to just discredit or remove things from programming because it's easier, right? Teaching a barbell deadlift to somebody is more difficult than teaching a kettlebell deadlift or, a different variation. So I think a lot of times they do things for the structure of their gym and the style of their gym, which we do too at times because, when you're looking at it and you have 20 people in a class, how do you managerially fit these exercises? So sometimes our workouts aren't ideal, but they're ideal for 20 people. You know what I'm saying? So it's not always necessarily about the most perfect exercise selection or program. It's about what works well for your space and for your clientele. And I think that's how they've designed their space to be this factory kind of run thing. And that's how they do it. They have pods where this group will do A block and they'll go over there where the benches are and they'll do a barbell bench press. And then obviously you can't deadlift with that. So they're doing single leg deadlifts. And then they'll go over here where they have all their Bulgarian split squat stands. They'll do Bulgarian split squat stands. And they might do a ring row off of that. So they have it laid out.
I knew you were going to say that.
Well, because that was the workout that they put us through when we went there.
Oh.
Yeah.
In my head, I was going to say it out loud, and you said it.
Yeah. Some inside of your head, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's something that makes us a little bit different from other gyms. I've definitely, I've tried metabolic. I've gone to other CrossFit gyms and things like that before. And a lot of them, now that you just said that, I feel are moving more towards that. Metabolic, have you ever gone before? Mm-mm. I feel when I've gone before, it was very much so, everything was more stationed and we go point A to point B to point C, whatever.
Because
so
it's efficiency, right? So
yeah.
Because they do it a lot, and Riley and I, we just talked about this too, is a lot of gyms, and even in our entrepreneurship group that we're in, they look at everything, every square inch or everything that you do as a way to make money. Right. And I think there is something about that as a business. Like you want to obviously be profitable, but I think, like even our social events that we're talking about, like we're not using them as ways to get other people in the gym. We're using them as ways to have fun with our people. So not everything has to be like, what's your return on your investment for that? Like, so yeah, sure. If we really thought about it and we wanted to pod up our gym and have like sections of it, like we can easily fit 24 people or 30 people in a class and they sit in their little 10 by 10 bubble and they have everything there and they don't move, and then it's like very stale, very business oriented. Like I know one of the guys, Stu from WTF Gym Talk, who's great, who's helped us with content in the past also, and I love him, but he has this idea like you do these bubbles and everything is operational capacity, right? So using your space and then in that too, like you would never do anything on the wall. You would never do a handstand push-up or a wall walk or anything like that because you wouldn't leave your little bubble. So then it limits you again, the exercises you're going to use because now I can only do the things that I can do inside of my bubble. Let's say in that bubble you have a ski erg, a box, a squat rack, and a barbell, and maybe like a couple dumbbells or something like that. So then you're very limited with your program, what you can do. And I think that there has to be for me personally, I think there has to be a fine balance between like, okay, how much profit or how much operational capacity do we want to have versus like how much do we want it to be free flowing, friendly, and have this other kind of vibe to it. Because I think I've gone back and forth with this, and I think the consensus for me has been that I'd rather have it be, not so sterile and regimented because I'm not like I'm regimented in the way I live my life and I eat and I do certain things, but in terms of like coming in like a factory worker and going, I have to reserve spot number 1 and I come and work out at spot number 1 and I do my thing and then I walk out the door in this cyclical kind of factory setting. I feel like that's kind of stale and lame.
Yeah, I was gonna just like adding off of that too, and I bet most of our members would agree with this. Like, yes, in that small group setting, you can high five each other and like a little bit of team camaraderie, but that's one of my favorite things that gets me through almost every workout that we do is when we're moving with our different AMRAPs and just things that you can like high five the people that you're walking by or just like you're looking across, I'm on a bike erg and I'm looking at our ski ergs and I'm like, let's go. And I feel like everybody would agree with that you're just moving. It's not just you're stuck in one area for the entire hour that we're doing like our workouts.
Yeah.
I would get sick of that really quick.
Do you want to know a fun fact? This is the only gym I've ever been to.
That's not true. I mean, you've dropped into other gyms.
Yeah, but this is the only one I've ever had like a membership. I've never gone to
anywhere else.
Yeah. Like I've done competitions and I've been to other gyms, but I've never
like been a part.
Like
consistent
paid
member.
another place to like go there consistently. Yeah. That is pretty cool. He could probably say the same for the last 10 years.
Hey, I own the gym, so it's a little different. Well, prior to that, I mean, honestly, the gym that I came from, and there was just a throwback picture, and like we were in the early days of CrossFit, so I think CrossFit, 10, 12, 15 years ago was very different than CrossFit is today too. And I think it was in the grassroots kind of like fun thing where you can actually go and people weren't treating it as like a professional sport where it was kind of fun to just like throw down and you were actually kind of good because you could have been good in like the region. Like there was one year that I was almost going to make regionals because they used to have it so different. Just being like a regular dude who worked out like I work out now and had a real job. And then there was a certain point where it transitioned where none of the people in the CrossFit realm had real jobs and they only worked out all day. And then it just got to a point where the movements got more reckless. With last year with the person dying and the thing, like everything just got more and more reckless as the years kind of gone on. And they got more like circus tricks versus like just like working out and being competitive and having fun. And I think once that transition happened, I think a lot of folks you've seen the downturn of the CrossFit, which is why the High Rocks stuff now is becoming more popular. And also High Rocks is more accessible to more people. It takes people from like the CrossFit world because you can do all this stuff and it's familiar, like wall balls and sleds and rowing and skiing. And then it also takes people from like the Spartan race area because then the strength movements aren't like clean and jerks or snatches and it's very accessible. Like transitioning from doing Spartan races or marathoning and doing 100 wall balls isn't a big deal. But, and then transitioning from CrossFit and doing 100 wall balls is like business as usual. So I think they found this sweet spot in this middle ground where, you are moving yourself away from CrossFit and like these really weird sequences of movements that are very dangerous for the regular person to like look at and do. And you're pulling on both populations of the CrossFit people and the kind of marathoner or Spartan race person.
All right. Well, have we hit 30 minutes yet?
We are at exactly 30 minutes right now.
All right. So my final wrap-up question, because I don't know when we'll do the next one. Maybe we'll keep the same schedule after our Saturday
The goal
workouts.
would be Saturday every day. Saturday.
Starting this upcoming week, Thursday, CrossFit Open starts. What are your guys' predictions for that first workout?
I could care less, honestly. I have not paid attention to CrossFit in general. The only reason why I know it is because you just said it, and Riley kind of keeps me updated. I didn't know that
it's
Thursday
fun,
was the
just
open.
for funsies. It starts
Just for
on
fun.
Thursday.
Take a guess.
So the first workout is 99% of the time the most accessible workout because they wanted people to sign up and do it. So they make it the easiest workout of the thing. So it's going to be something that's super easy that everyone can do. That's not scary. And the movement wise, it'll probably be something like wall balls. Like I just said, 'cause it's accessible, maybe rowing and maybe like a box jump. Do you want the exact rep scheme and everything?
What do you think? 21, 15, 9?
No.
No?
Well, I
What's your
almost
guess?
died last year when we had to do the burpees. And
What's your guess?
It wouldn't be 21, 15, 9. That's too easy of a workout.
Didn't they do that for the first one last year?
We
It was
did
21.
We
Oh,
did
no, it was
21.
different.
It was, yeah, we
It was
did.
a snatch.
It was the snatches. We did 21, 21,
There was
21,
three
21.
Yeah, there was multiple movements though.
It was snatch and, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Let's hear it.
The actual thing, the rep scheme.
Yeah. Wait. We need a bet.
We need a whiteboard so we can draw it out.
If you're correct, help.
I hope you're the one that said that we need to bet. I don't care about betting.
We'll supply the coffee next time.
I did supply.
Oh,
I gave her money. She refused to use it.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yo, coach is 5:15 next Friday.
Sure.
Okay. But how do we, like, what is it? What is the bet exactly?
If you're
Because
right.
going to
Whoever's
guess.
the
If you're
closest.
But you're going to guess too. Like
Yeah,
how
whoever's
how
the
do you determine the
closest.
closest? Like who selects the movements right or selects the?
No, I'm not guessing. Just
Why?
if you're right.
No.
No.
You're guessing too, and then I'm gonna pick who was the closest.
How are you going to determine that?
Because you just said wall balls, rowing, whatever, and then you
Yeah,
just
but what if she says the same three movements?
she can't. She has to pick totally different ones.
Oh, awesome.
That's not fair.
It's
because
completely
gonna
fair.
Be
No, so you said the movements first, and now you're gonna say
You had a chance to go first.
Now you're gonna say your movements, and then you're gonna say your reps, and then he can say the reps, and then I'll pick who's the closest.
Okay.
So your final thing was wall balls, rowing,
Box jumps.
box jumps. It's not going to be burpees or snatches again at the beginning.
No, it's
Maybe like
Although they could repeat. I mean, a few years ago they did
they hinted
dumbbell.
at they were going to repeat something that was done a few years ago.
So they did do a dumbbell snatch burpee box jump over workout a few years ago. That was pretty
That was
accessible. I did
please
it.
God no, don't do
I
that
did that
again.
at CrossFit One Nation, and it was the worst coach CrossFit class I've ever been to. And he didn't give us the cues on how to do it correctly. And I came back, and I was like 3 minutes slower than everyone who did it here because there was things that he didn't tell us to do that we could have done, like hop off the box or do different things like that. Or yeah, it was pretty shitty. Although most of my experiences at CrossFit gyms are usually pretty shitty. Riley texted me when I was going to the gym recently. She said the chances that the workout is worth it, 0. The chances that you're going to be mad afterwards, 100%.
I was
You just
spot
have
on.
high expectations.
I
Yeah.
was spot on.
Yeah, we didn't
Well,
do
and you're a gym owner, so like you're always gonna have like you're gonna be able to nitpick things. Like you have your own gym. and stuff.
I don't know if that's entirely true. Like, cause there's what?
Nothing. I was just chuckling at you. Saying
No, I think if shit is put together, like I'm not gonna nitpick it. Like I've gone to places and been like surprised or like I know we went to one in Miami that was like I was blown away, but it was also a much different style. But just like the way that the gym was laid out, the cleanliness of it, things like that. Like this gym, like the coach came in late with their dog. There was no warm up.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah.
That'll do it.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of bad things, a lot of like negative check marks on that one. But that isn't always the case.
All right, Riley, movements, go.
I'm gonna say a dumbbell thruster and
They won't
shuttle
do a
runs.
dumbbell thruster.
Well, you took
They've never
my,
done a dumbbell thruster.
You took
They're not
my
gonna do it.
okay. Well, you took mine.
I just told you.
I couldn't say the three.
Dumbbell snatch.
Huh?
Dumbbell snatch, more likely.
Not on the first one.
Okay.
We
They've never
did
done a
last
dumbbell.
year.
They've never done a dumbbell thruster before.
Maybe they will this year.
Maybe.
They won't. They won't.
All right, what's your rep? What do you think the reps are going to be?
It's a 10-minute AMRAP.
Really just bust it down.
Of what?
What?
Of what?
Shuttle runs and thrusters / snatches. She couldn't
What is
decide.
the rep schemes? Like what? How many reps of what? What are you doing?
I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
I'm gonna go 13-minute AMRAP. We'll go 21 calorie row, 18 wall balls, 15 box jump overs.
Okay.
Watch both of you guys just be so far off, and it's like, just like run 5 miles, and you have like a blank amount of time, like just some random thing.
No, he'll be close.
Are you excited about it?
No,
Meg,
I'm probably
why
not
would
even
you
doing
ask
it.
that?
I'm probably not even doing it.
Oh my god.
No, you are. Are you excited?
What's your rep scheme? You're like dragging this out.
I'm done.
You said 10-minute AMRAP. You didn't
I'm
give
not
anything.
gonna get it right. I'm not guessing.
Oh, you're so lame.
Get ready for.
Thank you.
Get ready to coach 5:15 next Friday.
I'm not coaching it.
Oh gosh.
Wow. You heard it here, folks.
All right, guys. Until next Saturday. Oh yeah. Come on, Ann.